Captain Rion Calder had always believed in one rule: keep a professional distance. Humanity had learned painfully that emotions in space, especially around alien species, could be dangerous. One wrong gesture, one personal connection, and entire alliances could crumble. That rule was his shield, his guide, and the reason he had survived long enough to earn command of the Verdant Exchange Station. The station orbited a small green sun on the edge of neutral space. Its corridors were a tangle of metals and holographic panels designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Diplomats, merchants, and military personnel crossed paths in the vast docking bays. Yet it was rare for anyone to leave a lasting impression on Rion. He had trained himself to notice only what mattered: threats, opportunities, and outcomes. Emotions were distractions. Until Lysera Taval arrived. Lysera was an Orlan, part of a species that had fascinated humanity for decades. They were taller than most humans, with luminous skin that shifted colors subtly with their emotions. Their eyes reflected light like crystals, and their voices had a harmonic quality that could soothe even the most chaotic mind. Most humans avoided close contact with Orlans. They were too perceptive, too sensitive, overwhelming. But Lysera was different. She was assigned as her people's lead negotiator for the exchange of Orlan crystal cores for human alloys. She approached her work with calm precision. Yet when Rian first saw her, he felt something he had never felt in the presence of an alien before, a pull he could not name. It was not desire, not simple curiosity. It was a magnetic force, like standing near a star, warm yet threatening. He told himself it was a distraction. He reminded himself of the stakes. Humanity could not afford to make mistakes here. The crystal cores were vital for Earth's expansion into new systems. The alloys humans offered in return were cutting-edge technology. If negotiations failed, both civilizations would suffer. Rion tried to maintain distance. During their first meeting, he kept his posture rigid, his voice even, and his expressions carefully neutral. He reminded himself that showing vulnerability to Lysera could be catastrophic. Diplomats of other species watched closely, interpreting every glance, every shift in tone. One wrong move, and rumors would spread. But Lysera had a way of closing gaps. She sensed emotional withdrawal as conflict. Every time Rion took a step back, she took one forward. Her steps were deliberate, unhurried, almost hypnotic. She spoke in a soft, melodic tone that made the human mind crave connection, yet without overt coercion. During their first negotiation session, a dispute arose over the purity of the crystal cores. Rion argued firmly, citing human standards and testing protocols. Lysera responded calmly, her voice steady, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the conference room. She listened, as if his words carried the weight of 1,000 truths. Rion felt his carefully maintained control beginning to fray. He noticed her standing a few inches too close, leaning just enough to catch his inflections. He noticed how the air seemed warmer where she moved, how her presence quieted the chaos in his mind. It was not something he could name, and that made it more dangerous. Over the next few days, their encounters became a delicate dance. Every meeting was a test of self-control. Rion reminded himself that he could not let the situation spiral. He observed her for signs of manipulation, of hidden motives, but found none. She was honest, forthright, and intelligent. Dangerous, perhaps, but not deceitful. One afternoon, a minor crisis occurred in the station's power grid. Human engineers and Orlan technicians argued over priorities. The station's central energy field flickered dangerously, threatening to halt the negotiation sessions. Rion intervened, mediating between the two groups. Lysera joined him, her presence calming the Orlan team. "Captain Calder," she said, her voice low enough that only he could hear, "you are too tense. Your decisions are sharper when you release some control." Rion stiffened. He was trained to act decisively, to control outcomes, and yet here was a being telling him to let go. He wanted to step back, to regain his composure. Instead, he found himself taking a small step toward her. Lysera noticed, of course. Her eyes flickered briefly with color, a subtle Orlan expression of curiosity and approval. She leaned slightly closer. Not enough to break protocol, but enough that Rian felt it in his chest. He wanted to resist, to pull away, but the pull was too strong. As the days passed, the tension grew. Every meeting brought new challenges. Human delegates complained about the Orlons' emotional methods. Orlons whispered that humans were too rigid, and Rian, he felt as if he were walking a razor's edge. One misstep could cost him his career, Earth's interests, or both. One evening, after a long day of negotiations, Rian returned to his private quarters. The station's artificial sun cast soft shadows across the metallic walls. He poured himself a glass of water and tried to think logically. But his thoughts kept drifting back to Lysara, the way she had stepped closer during the power crisis. The way her eyes had reflected understanding without judgment. The next morning, they met again. A dispute had arisen over a shipment of alloys. Humans claimed a minor impurity. Orlons insisted the crystals were flawless. The room was tense. Delegates from both sides glared at one another, ready to escalate. Lys era approached. Rian, her movement calm, deliberate. She stood slightly closer than usual. The distance was small, yet it was enough to send a shock through him. He felt the hum of her empathic field, a sensation that made him acutely aware of every thought and emotion in the room. His heart beat faster, his palms slightly dampened. "Captain Calder," she said softly, "focus on the solution, not the tension. You cannot control everything." Her words struck him. He realized she was right. He could not control the outcome entirely, and trying to do so would only create more problems. He took a deep breath and allowed himself to step forward, just slightly. Their proximity was enough that he could feel her presence as a grounding force rather than a threat. In that moment, Brienne understood something fundamental. Lysara was not a temptation to be resisted. She was a partner, a being whose skills, instincts, and empathy complemented his own. He had been so focused on control, on maintaining distance, that he had failed to see that she was offering something humanity had rarely encountered. True. Collaboration with another species. The negotiations that day shifted dramatically. With Lysara at his side, Rian found clarity. Decisions flowed naturally. Compromises were reached without argument. Delegates on both sides noted the change, though they did not understand the cause. Later, when the room cleared, Lysara remained near him. Their shoulders brushed, and Rian felt a warmth spread through his chest. He wanted to speak, to acknowledge the connection, but words failed him. For the first time, he was unsure whether he was navigating diplomacy or something far more personal over the next week. Rian and Lysara's interactions continued to grow in intensity. Each meeting required him to balance duty with the strange, unspoken bond that had formed. He maintained his professionalism, but the pull of her presence was undeniable. Every glance, every subtle gesture, demanded attention. One day, during a critical session with human and Orlan engineers, Lysara stepped closer than ever before. She leaned over a holographic projection, her shoulder brushing his. The simple act sent a jolt through him. His training, his rules, his careful distance all seemed to crumble in an instant. Rian realized then that he faced a choice. Retreat. Maintain the rigid boundaries that had kept him safe for years, or allow the connection to guide him. He hesitated, knowing the risks. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw no manipulation, no hidden agenda. Only trust, only focus, only understanding. The room held its breath, though no one noticed. Rian made his decision silently. He would not step back. He would not resist. Not because he wanted comfort or companionship, but because he recognized that Lysara's presence, her nearness, was the key to success. Their combined strength, human resilience, and oral and empathy could navigate challenges that neither species could face alone. And so, the line he had tried to uphold began to blur. Rian Calder, human captain, protector of humanity's interests, realized that the greatest strength he could wield was not control. It was trust. And Lysara Taval, the Orlan diplomat who had stepped too close, was teaching him exactly that. For the first time in his life, he understood that sometimes The greatest danger and the greatest power came from standing close enough to connect. The battle for diplomacy had just begun. And the subtle electric tension between them promised that nothing would ever be the same again. The Verdant exchange station had never felt so tense. After weeks of negotiations, Rian Calder had learned that diplomacy in space was not measured by words alone. Every glance, every step, every heartbeat mattered. And now, with Lysera Taval at his side, those tiny moments had magnified into something he could not ignore. Rumors had begun to spread across the station. Observers whispered about the strange closeness between the human captain and the Orlan diplomat. Some speculated that she had influenced him, while others claimed the human was manipulating her. In truth, neither was trying to control the other. Their connection had grown organically, built on trust, mutual respect, and the realization that each complemented the other in ways neither had. Anticipated, but peace is fragile in space. A sudden alarm shattered the calm of the station. Red lights flashed across the hallways, warning of an external threat. The Cardominion, a militaristic species that thrived on chaos, had detected the unusual human-Orlan alliance and interpreted it as a threat to their influence. They had sent a fleet to blockade and attack the station, hoping to disrupt negotiations and assert dominance. Rian and Lysera were immediately thrust into crisis. Alarms blared and automated turrets powered up as civilians and military personnel scrambled to secure the station. Humans and Orlans worked side by side for the first time, coordinating defenses. But panic was spreading. Lysera's empathic abilities, once a stabilizing presence in quiet negotiations, were now under strain. The fear and anxiety of thousands of beings, humans, Orlans, and others, flooded her senses. She trembled slightly, struggling to filter the chaos. Rian noticed instantly. He had always relied on his instincts in crises, and now he realized something profound. While Lysera could feel emotions, he could act decisively. Humans had survived countless disasters because they could make hard choices when others froze. He stepped closer to her, his hand brushing against her shoulder, not as a gesture of intimacy, but as an anchor. "You can do this," he said firmly. "Focus on guiding them. I'll handle what I can here." Lysera drew a deep breath. Her shoulders straightened, and she began to project calm to the civilians and crew. Humans, who normally relied on logic and hierarchy, now felt her empathy as guidance. Panic subsided slightly. Her influence allowed Rian to organize defensive teams without chaos. The first wave of Dominion fighters struck the station's outer shields. Energy fields flared, forcing smaller ships to retreat or risk destruction. Rian coordinated with both human and Orlan pilots, directing countermeasures with precise commands. Each decision he made relied on rapid calculations, human ingenuity, and the adaptability his species was known for. Meanwhile, Lysera moved through the station, her empathic presence calming terrified civilians and injured personnel. Humans marveled at her ability to sense fear and guide them without touching them. Rian noticed how her color-shifting skin reflected subtle changes in her emotional output, each hue a language of reassurance and focus. Then came a critical failure. One of the station's primary power cores began to overheat, threatening to disable the shields entirely. Engineers argued over protocol, unsure whether to prioritize repairs or evacuation. The Dominion fleet had started targeting the weaker side of the station, and hesitation could mean disaster. Rian acted. He sprinted toward the core access chamber, issuing orders over his communicator. Lysera followed, staying close enough that he felt the hum of her presence as a stabilizing force. Inside the core chamber, alarms screamed, and heat filled the air. Rian assessed the situation quickly. The cooling system had failed, and manual override was required. He grabbed the emergency tools, knowing the human design of the station allowed quick but dangerous interventions. "Careful," Lysera said softly. "Your human caution is needed, but don't overthink. Act." He realized then that the lessons of trust and cooperation went beyond negotiation. He had resisted temptation for weeks, maintaining distance from her. But now, the danger was too immediate, and their bond, whatever it was was exactly what he needed to act effectively. Working together, they bypassed the automated safety protocols. Lysera guided him through the panic, helping him stay calm even as temperatures rose to dangerous levels. She sensed when he faltered and gave subtle cues, adjusting the flow of his breathing, timing his actions, and reminding him where to focus. By sheer skill, human determination, and her empathic guidance, they stabilized the core just as the Dominion's weapons struck the station. The shields flickered, but held, buying time for counterattacks. The Car Dominion fleet was relentless. Small boarding craft breached the outer perimeter. Rian led a mixed team of human and Orlan security officers to repel the invaders. Lysera stayed behind, guiding civilians and coordinating logistics, her presence preventing panic from spreading. Rian moved with precision, his decisions fast and adaptive. He had survived countless dangers in his career, but this was different. The Dominion expected humans to react predictably, emotionally, even recklessly. Instead, Rian leveraged human creativity and resilience, acting in ways the Dominion could not anticipate. His team followed his lead, inspired by the calm yet unyielding presence he projected. When a boarding craft broke through an inner airlock, Rian personally confronted the intruders. The Car Dominion soldiers were heavily armed, expecting fear. Instead, they met a human captain who fought not out of aggression, but out of necessity, courage, and unwavering focus. His movements were precise, almost mechanical. But guided by intuition honed through years of survival, Lysera sensed the intruders' fear and confusion. She projected calm into the minds of nearby humans, preventing hesitation and mistakes. The combination of human instinct and oral and empathy became a force the Dominion had not predicted. In the chaos, Rian and Lysera's connection deepened. Every glance, every shared instinct, every small action reinforced a bond that was no longer about restraint. Their coordination saved lives, stabilized the station, turned the tide against the attackers. Finally, after hours of relentless defense, the Dominion forces retreated. The station was battered but intact. The citizens, human and alien alike, to their leaders for guidance. Rian and Lysera stood side by side. His shoulder brushed hers, not by accident, but in acknowledgement of their shared struggle. Neither needed words. Their partnership had become a symbol of strength, a testament to what humans could achieve when they adapted and connected with others. In the council chamber, representatives from multiple species questioned their closeness. Rumors and whispers filled the room, but Rian did not flinch. "She is not a temptation," he stated clearly. "She is a partner. Together, we defended this station. Together, we saved lives. And together, we represent the strength that can arise when species trust one another." Lysera stepped forward, her luminous skin shifting to soft shades of blue and green, the Orlan color for trust and admiration. She added, "We stood close, not out of desire, but necessity. Our species are different, yet complementary. This is the beginning of something new." No, the council was silent. None could deny the results. The humans had demonstrated adaptability, courage, and quick thinking. The Orlans had shown how emotional intelligence and empathy could stabilize chaos. And together, they had formed a partnership that no Dominion fleet or any other threat could easily challenge in private. As the station began repairs and life slowly returned to normal, Rian and Lysera finally allowed themselves a moment of reflection. "You could have resisted," Rian said quietly. "You didn't have to come so close." Lysera smiled, a gesture that conveyed warmth, understanding, and approval. "And you could have stepped back, held the line of duty, but you didn't. You trusted, Captain. You acted as only a human could." Rian realized then that the human ability to adapt, to persevere, and to act decisively in impossible circumstances had been amplified by their collaboration. His species' strength had always been its resilience. Lysera had reminded him that sometimes resilience was best expressed not in isolation but through connection, their bond. Once feared as dangerous or distracting, had become their greatest asset. It had allowed humanity to shine in ways the Dominion had never expected. and it had forged a partnership that might define interstellar relations for decades to come. For the first time in his life, Rian Calder understood that standing close could be a source of power, not weakness. And Lysera, who had stepped forward when he least expected it, had taught him that lesson in the most profound way as the stars of the neutral sector shimmered outside the station's observation windows. Rian and Lysera stood together, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Humanity had faced countless dangers, but when humans chose trust, courage, and cooperation, they became unstoppable, and the universe had just witnessed it firsthand.